So, a recent interview with Elon Musk completely blew up the internet. And look, if you get past the headlines, there is a much, much deeper story here about the future of AI, our entire economy, and honestly, some pretty massive corporate chess moves. We're going to break down what he said, sure, but also the skepticism, the brilliant business strategy, and the sci-fi vision that's really behind it all. Let's get into it. And this is what really kicked everything off. This bombshell of an idea. Musk just casually suggests that, in the long run, money itself might just become obsolete. He's imagining a world where AI and robotics can satisfy every single human need, which would make money, which he calls a database for labor allocation, totally irrelevant. It's a wild utopian thought, and it was the hook for everything else he said. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at Musk's obvious AI bet. Then we'll explore that wild post-money utopia idea. After that, we'll hit the awkward reality of how people reacted, dig deep into NVIDIA's insane hardware advantage, and then wrap it all up with a final equation. Okay, let's start with Musk's core argument. When he was really pressed for his investment thesis, he laid out this grand vision for where, all the value is going to come from in the future. It's really fascinating how he positions himself. He goes out of his way to say he's not a typical investor, right? He says he doesn't have a portfolio. His focus is just on building companies, building technology. And this is such a key part of his public identity. He's the engineer, not the Wall Street guy. And this is what makes the next part so interesting. So despite calling himself a builder, when the interviewer basically forced him to pick some stocks for a capitalistic end, he had two answers ready to go. Boom, Google and NVIDIA. He even called the NVIDIA pick obvious at this point, which, wow, that really sets the stage for the whole strategic picture. So why those two? Well, his reasoning is actually pretty simple, and it's huge. He basically thinks that companies working on AI and robotics are going to represent, and these are his words, overwhelmingly all the value in the future. The sheer amount of stuff these technologies will produce will be so massive that it'll just dwarf everything else. Okay, now let's see how this goes from just a simple stock pick to a totally radical vision for society. This is where he stops sounding like an investor and starts sounding, well, more like a sci-fi prophet. And then he made this just an unbelievable claim. He said that the U.S.'s $38 trillion national debt could be solved in 3 years. Not through taxes, not through spending cuts, but with technology. His whole theory is that AI and robotics will kick production into such high gear that it'll cause deflation. And in a world where prices are falling, that giant pile of debt suddenly looks a whole lot smaller. Now, if this sounds like something ripped straight from a novel, that's because it is. Musk himself pointed to IMM Bank's science fiction series, The Culture, as the best picture of this future. It's about this galactic, post-scarcity society run by super smart AIs, where humans just live without money, doing whatever they want, while automation handles all the work. But, as soon as these huge ideas hit the public square, the reality check came in fast and hard. The reaction was, well, let's just say it was far from utopian. Yeah, the media reviews were not kind at all. The Himachal Wire, for instance, called the nearly 2-hour interview a huge missed opportunity. They said it had no organic flow and was mostly just ideas Musk has said a million times before. The overall vibe was that it was all sizzle and no steak. And the public reaction on places like Reddit? Oh, even more cynical. Like this one user who sarcastically wrote, "Man who was awarded $1 trillion says he thinks AI and robotics will do well." Gee, you think? Others figured he was just trying to keep the AI bubble from popping, while some even joked that his endorsement was the kiss of death for NVIDIA and Google. Ouch. And what really adds fuel to this skepticism is when you put his boundless AI predictions next to his own very real admissions about his other tech. I mean, here he is talking about Starlink, and he's super blunt. When it comes to competing with a cell tower that's just a kilometer away, he says physics is not on our side. It's this grounded, realistic statement that just clashes so hard with his claim about solving the national debt with AI in 3 years. So let's try to put these two sides together. Is it all just hype, or is there a deeper game being played? This is where his obvious bet on NVIDIA becomes so important. It's not just about the code, it's about the silicon, it's about the hardware. This number tells a huge part of the story, $45.8 billion. That is the value of NVIDIA's purchase obligations and their long-term supply deals. It hints at a strategy that is so much bigger than just making the best chip. They are building a fortress out of hardware. So how in the world are they doing it? Well, analysts have a name for it: strategic capacity capture. First, NVIDIA pays these memory makers, like SK Hynix, massive amounts of cash up front, basically funding their new factories. Second, they use that leverage to book out the entire supply of critical parts like high-bandwidth memory, all the way through 2026. And the result? It's genius. Even if a rival like AMD builds a better chip, they literally can't buy the parts to make it at scale. NVIDIA has cornered the market on the physical stuff you need to build AI. This strategy also helps explain why Musk's other obvious pick, Google, still can't really compete with NVIDIA's dominance, even with their powerful custom TPU chips. Look at this breakdown. NVIDIA's GPUs, they're standard. You can plug them into any data center. Google's TPUs, it's a closed system. You have to rebuild everything around them. And the software? 90% of developers use NVIDIA's CUDA. Switching costs a fortune. And finally, Google is fighting with itself. Its cloud team wants to sell TPUs, but its AI team wants to keep the best ones. NVIDIA's business logic, simple: sell to everyone. So all of this brings us to the final equation. We've got this grand, utopian, science fiction vision on one hand, and this cold, hard, strategic reality on the other. How do we make sense of it all? Ultimately, you're left with these two competing stories, right? Is this the visionary who read the Culture series and genuinely believes we are on the verge of a post-scarcity utopia? Or is this the incredibly savvy businessman who understands the supply chain down to the microchip and is publicly boosting the exact technologies that his own companies, Tesla, xAI, SpaceX, are becoming totally dependent on? And that really is the central question of this whole thing, isn't it? Is Elon Musk a prophet giving us a peek at a radically different future? Or is he the ultimate promoter, using his giant platform to make sure the AI bubble, the very bubble that props up the valuations of all his ventures, doesn't pop? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but it's a question that is absolutely worth thinking about.